Welcome to The Explainer. Okay, today we're unraveling the only unsolved case of air piracy in the entire history of United States commercial aviation. It is a story of absolute audacity, meticulous planning, and a man who literally vanished into thin air, leaving behind a legacy that is still baffling forensic scientists today. 54. It has been exactly 54 years since a man hijacked a commercial jet, secured a massive ransom, and jumped into the freezing night sky. And you know what's crazy? Over half a century later, this cold case isn't just alive. Thanks to modern science, the investigation is actually more active right now than it has been in decades. Section 1. The perfect skyjacking. Boarding Northwest Orient Flight 305. Okay, let's dive into this. Picture this. It's Thanksgiving Eve, 1971. A calm, polite man, looking to be in his mid-40s, walks up to an airline counter in Portland, Oregon. He's wearing a sharp, dark business suit, a white shirt, and a black clip-on tie. He pays cash for a one-way ticket to Seattle and gives his name simply as Dan Cooper. Once he's on board, things move with terrifying precision. Shortly after 3 p.m., Cooper hands a flight attendant a note, pops open a briefcase full of wires and red cylinders, a bomb, and demands $200,000 and 4 parachutes. By 5:39 p.m., the plane lands in Seattle, where he calmly trades the 36 passengers for the cash and the chutes. At 7:40 p.m., they're back in the air, heading south with just the crew. Then, at exactly 8:13 p.m., the pilots feel this sudden upward pitch of the plane's tail. Cooper had opened the rear stairs and jumped into the freezing night. But here's the thing. Cooper didn't just tell the pilots to fly south. He gave them incredibly specific aeronautical instructions. He demanded a maximum altitude of 10,000 feet, the landing gear had to be kept down, wing flaps set to exactly 15 degrees, and the cabin depressurized. These demands were absolutely brilliant. They forced the Boeing 727 to fly at a sluggish 150 knots, which is slow enough and low enough to make a parachute jump survivable without needing an oxygen mask. This proved, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that Cooper possessed highly sophisticated insider aviation knowledge. Section 2. Vanishing into the night, the search and the paradox. So, when that plane finally touches down in Reno, hours later, Cooper is just gone. This immediately kicks off NORJAC, the Northwest Hijacking investigation. The FBI and the military launched this massive ground and air search through the hostile, rugged, old-growth forests of the Pacific Northwest, but they find absolutely nothing. Which brings us to the central paradox of this guy's profile. On one hand, we're looking at a methodical genius. He brilliantly selected the 727 specifically for its rear air stair, dictated precise flight configurations, and cleverly demanded 4 parachutes so authorities wouldn't dare risk giving him a sabotaged one. But contrast that with his fatal errors. He jumped into a freezing rainstorm wearing a business suit and smooth-soled loafers. He brought 0 survival gear. And incredibly, he used a dummy training parachute that had been sewn shut. It's this wild contradiction between engineering foresight and what looks like a totally suicidal execution. Section 3. Ties, titanium, and river money, the microscopic clues. Let's slow things down a bit to dissect the physical evidence. Now, what's really interesting about this evidence is what they found on Cooper's discarded clip-on tie. Forensic scientists analyzing it in 2009 and again in 2025 found over 100,000 microscopic particles. They found unalloyed titanium, bismuth, aluminum, cerium, and strontium sulfide. Now, unalloyed titanium was a super exotic material back in 1971, primarily used in high-tech aerospace manufacturing. So this wasn't the tie of some random street criminal. This chemical signature points directly to an aerospace engineer or maybe a manager who routinely walked the floors of a highly specialized manufacturing plant. And then there's the ransom money, $5,800. Out of the $200,000 stolen, this is literally the only amount that was ever recovered. And it wasn't even found by the FBI's massive search teams. It was discovered 9 years later in 1980 by an 8-year-old boy digging in the sand on the banks of the Columbia River. But finding that cash opened up this enormous geographical and hydrological puzzle. Geological evidence indicates these bundles of cash arrived at this location, a spot known as Tina Bar, sometime after 1974. Think about that. That's at least 3 years after the hijacking. Plus, Tina Bar is miles away from the suspected jump zone. So how on earth did rotting, rubber-banded bundles of cash end up there years later? Did Cooper survive and bury it?
Or did it somehow wash down through an impossibly complex network of rivers?
Which leads directly to the greatest debate of the entire investigation. Did D.B. Cooper actually survive? Let's weigh it out. Arguments for his survival point out that 10,000 feet is a completely standard jump altitude, the plane's speed was remarkably slow, and crucially, no body or main parachute has ever been found out there in the woods. However, the arguments for his death are pretty compelling too. He jumped into freezing rain over rugged pitch-black terrain, wearing smooth-sole loafers, using an unsteerable parachute. And perhaps the most telling detail of all, not a single one of the remaining ransom bills ever entered public circulation.
Honestly, whether he lived or died, Cooper permanently changed how we all travel. After this, aviation regulators mandated the Cooper vane. It's a mechanical latch retrofitted onto all Boeing 727s that physically prevents the rear stairs from being opened mid-flight. Beyond that hardware fix, Cooper's brazen act was a primary catalyst for the mandatory baggage screenings, metal detectors, and the modern TSA security checkpoints we all go through today.
Section 4. The 2026 parachute breakthrough, the cold case revived. For decades, the trail felt completely cold. The FBI even officially closed the case in 2016. But massive modern breakthroughs have forced the FBI to quietly reevaluate everything. Let's look at the prime suspect driving all this, Richard Floyd McCoy Jr. McCoy was a Vietnam vet and a highly experienced paratrooper. Get this, just 5 months after Cooper, McCoy hijacked a 727 using identical methods. Recently, McCoy's family discovered a modified 1 in a billion parachute on their property, along with a skydiving logbook. The FBI actually seized this parachute in 2023, tested it, and then silently returned it in December 2025 without a single word of explanation. This massive circumstantial case and that very parachute evidence were just presented by his children at a major aviation safety summit in January 2026.
And that brings us to the cutting edge of modern science. Right now, forensic scientists are utilizing next-generation sequencing to compare the 54-year-old DNA extracted from Cooper's clip-on tie directly to McCoy's living relatives. By using the exact same forensic genealogy techniques that have cracked countless other cold cases, investigators might finally be able to extract a definitive biological match.
Section 5. The enduring enigma, legacy of an American folk hero.
You know, Cooper committed a massive federal crime, yet he kind of morphed into this romanticized folk hero. Mostly because he didn't hurt any passengers and stole from a massive corporation. So to the public back then, it felt like a victimless crime. The myth of the polite, resourceful loner who beat the system still strongly resonates today. But behind all that myth, and this brilliantly illustrates it, here is exactly where we stand. We know he jumped at roughly 8:13 p.m., we know he requested 4 shoots and left his tie. And we know his actions prompted massive aviation security changes. But the unknowns, they are staggering. His true identity, his survival status, and the whereabouts of nearly $195,000. It is just astonishing how many massive gaps remain after half a century of FBI investigations.
So who was Dan Cooper? And will modern DNA finally solve America's perfect crime? That is the ultimate question we are left with. As the forensic nets tighten in 2026, we might finally be on the verge of a definitive answer. But for now, after 54 years, thousands of suspects, and endless searches, the man calling himself Dan Cooper remains exactly where he always wanted to be: unknown, unidentified, and free.